Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is remove the adjuster right here. This adjusts the pitch of the props, and by loosening it up you can actually turn this and adjust prop pitch. Okay, so we're going to remove this. Be very careful not to lose anything. And after you take this thing out, you have the 3 screws that keep this attached to the clutch. So remove all of these screws. Remember, you're working with plastic. There's a lot of plastic in these things, and so if you over tighten something, in this case we're loosening it up, but after, when you put everything back together, you have to be careful not to over tighten stuff, but at the same time you want it to be snug so things don't start falling off when you're underwater. So this is going to come out, okay, and you can see from the other side you can keep the screws in there, okay, and I'm going to take the screws out just to show you how these fit. So basically you have the pitch assembly, and the little notch right there goes inside the other little notch. There goes one of my props, and by fitting it there, actually let me take the screws out because it'll make it easier. Alright, so this piece comes out, and I already washed this, but even though I washed it, you can still find a little bit of dirt in here. So one of the things that I recommend is that every time you wash your or every time you take your scooter in salt water, remember these things were really meant to be used in fresh water, but if you do take it in salt water, and I do take mine quite often, make sure that you rinse it off really good. It has to be washed really good. So fits in there like this, okay, and this is basically the piece that adjusts up and down, or adjusts your prop pitch, okay. As you tighten it, it brings it up or brings it down like that, okay. So I press here, and now you have to look for the notch right there. Hopefully you can see these. I try to do the best lighting that I could, but on the notch, and these things are a pain. You'll probably drop them a few times, but it's just the nature of the game. And it's easier to do it on a table. I'm doing it here so you guys can see it, and hopefully I won't drop it, but that's basically it. So then this can be adjusted to go up and down once you are ready to place it on the shaft there. Okay, so I'm going to put this off to the side so we can talk a little bit about the rest of the assembly here. So now we're getting into the clutch area, and you have this screw here that has some washers in there. I try not to lose the way the washers are put in, or else you have to go one by one. These are the washers are special washers that I used to allow the clutch to come free should your hand get stuck in the prop. Okay, so that's they have a different shape to them, but when you take them out, preferably try to keep them in the same order, or else you're gonna have to figure it all out. But you see there's spaces, and basically what I found out is that there's a little washer, very thin washer right there. This is the first one that goes in, and then you have a couple of washers that work against each other. So for example, you could see that one bends in, the other one bends out, so you got to kind of turn them like that to create these spring-like effect when you put the scooter back. Okay, but remember that little washer is the first one to go in there, and then these other ones up on the top. Okay, be very careful. If you lose even one of these, you're in trouble. You're gonna have to order it in order for it to work properly. Here we go, getting into the clutch. This is all made of plastic. I know they make different ones out there that cost a little bit more money, and they also make one of these clutch things that has a diode or whatever they call it for salt water. I have not had a chance to get one. That's something on my list, but it's very, very simple. Now, if you don't wash this piece here after using it in salt water, you're going to run into problems like I have in the past, which is that this piece will get stuck in there and it won't come out. It'll be full of salt and stuff. It'll be stuck, and then in order to take it out, it's a pain. You're going to have a hell of a hard time taking it out, to the point where you could damage the shaft. You could even damage the pump seal here, the water seal that's under there. Okay, so this is one thing you have to be very careful with. Alright, so I am not going to disassemble the whole thing today because I don't have an extra water seal or pump seal, but I am going to take out this little pin right here. Again, be very careful with this. And I am going to remove the carter pin. You need a special tool for this to take it out. And it is a little bit of a problem. Be very careful not to lose it. There it is. Okay. Next, you have this washer thing. Okay. And you have the spring. And then this piece right here slides out. Like I said, I don't want to take it out because I don't have another one to replace it. Usually when you take this thing out, you better have another one or else you're going to be stuck. They usually get damaged. That's why this one is working good. I don't want to touch it. What I do like to do sometimes is when I clean it up, if I go through it and I clean it up good, I like to stretch the coil a little bit. As you can see there, I stretch it out a little bit just to give it a little life back. Not too much, just a little bit, before I put it back in there. They do wear out a little bit. You can see there's a little bit of friction marks in there. So make sure you wash all of this good. I don't recommend spraying it with WD-40. I found that if you put WD-40 in there, you start getting a little bit of a leak. So I don't recommend that you do that. Okay. So putting it back together is very simple. All in reverse. Okay. Next, you have your carter pin. Using your handy dandy little tool, you push it down and until it snaps in place. There it is. Make sure that it is in place. Next, you have your little pin, the little pin thing right here. Now, I know this probably doesn't matter, but I like to be able to have the pin going across. You see the two pieces right there? Let's see if you can see this. I call these the ears of the carter pin, I guess. I think that's the name of it, carter pin. I'm not sure, but you know what those are. You can correct me down in the comments. But I like to make sure that this thing here is across and the ears are like this. I don't like having the ears like this because I have seen these things pop and they come right out. If it's across like this and it pops, it's still going to keep it somewhat in place. I don't know if that makes sense to you guys, but something to consider when you work on your own scooters. So I like to make sure that it's nice and snug in there and in the groove. And like I was saying, I like it to be like that. Okay. So after you've washed, if you've been in the ocean in salt water with this, hopefully you washed as well before you put it back on. I know some people put a little bit of grease in there. I haven't done that. Might be a good idea. It's up to you. As long as you wash it, I haven't had any problems. Okay, that goes over. Sometimes they start getting a little bit old and you might start getting a little bit of play. Mine is getting close to the time where I probably want to change it, but it's still good for now. No play here, no play there. By the way, I found that if your engine has play up and down, mine doesn't, as you can see, but if yours has play, you have to put washers in there, and you have to take that play out, or else you're going to get the famous Gavin leak. Okay, so making sure everything is in place. There it is. The next thing you're going to put in there is the rest of the clutch. Okay. The next thing is the little washer that I mentioned. In there like this. There's a little groove in there you can, okay? And next you get your washers. And there it is. Okay. Now you want to make sure this stuff is tight or snug. Do not over tight it. Make sure the washers are all straight. You know, make sure you go around and you don't have one lopsided or anything like that. Tighten it up. Make it snug. There it is. Okay. And so what happens is the washers are placed in a way that if the prop gets stuck on something or your hand goes in it, it allows just enough play. You don't want to be able to do it by hand, but it allows it enough play to disengage from the clutch and not hurt you. Okay. There it is. Okay, the next thing is the prop assembly is the next thing. This is going to be the one that's going to give you a little bit of grief probably, because it does fall apart very easily. Again, you can put a little bit of grease in there. Some people do. I don't like to do it. I just like to have it nice and clean. Okay. And here's one. Remember, look for the groove. 2 and 3. Come on. Ah! And there it is. This is what I was talking about. But and 3, then you got to press it down, and that's it. Okay, turn it around, carefully bring it in there and turn it until it clicks into place. Now what I like to do is I like to loosen it all up to the point where your clutch is at a neutral point, and if you go too far, you'll feel the assembly pushing the cap up. You don't want that. I found that it's best that you press down on the cap, it's pretty loose, and then turn it until you find a little resistance. See? And then stop there. Alright, so get your screws and they go in here. Now be careful because this is all plastic. If you over tighten it, you're gonna break it. Okay, I don't recommend using any power tools on this. Do it by hand, it's the best way. And I bring them all down, and then after they're done I go one by one and tighten them down. Okay, like I said, don't over tighten these things. Make them snug, but don't over tighten them or you'll regret it. Okay, so it's snug. Next thing I do is to put the adjuster knob on there. Okay, now these things tend to go a little wacky. As you can see from these one, it's already a little cracked there, and I don't usually adjust it. I put it on max. I'm always pedal to the metal with these things, so I like to adjust the props to the max. If you leave it like this, you're gonna get no you know, you're not gonna get anywhere. So what I like to do is now turn this all the way, and that's maximum adjustment. See, neutral, or you know, nothing there, it's not gonna. And then as you bring them, adjust the pitch and bring them up like that, you're gonna get more speed and more torque out of it. I like to have it at max with no, make sure there's no play, so I tighten it up good like that, and then I finish tightening up the screw. This one really doesn't have to be very tight. Unfortunately, mine already has a little bit of a crack from the previous owner, but it's still working good, so I leave it. See that hole right there? If you're wondering what that hole is for, I assume it's for you to be able to wash it. I like to get my hose and actually push water through there, and if you do push water through there, it comes out through the bottom and it rinses off your trigger system for your you know, for your scooter, your trigger system right here. So keep that in mind, and you should have no problem. You should enjoy many great dives with this. So guys, another thing that I highly suggest is that you you know, go through your scooter every time after every single dive. I have a routine every time I get home from a dive, being it freshwater or saltwater, is I like to go through the whole scooter and make sure everything is in good shape. I also like to go through my scooter before dives to make sure everything is in good shape, but you know, it's general maintenance. One of the things that I recommend is that once in a while you go through all of the connections to make sure that they're secure and they're not loose, because I mean, definitely you don't want to be diving somewhere and all of a sudden your scooter stops working just because the cable came loose. After each dive, I like to look in the compartment. So I go into the motor compartment. I like to look at it and make sure there's no signs of water. That's very important. These things are prone to that. And speaking of loose wires, they do get loose. This case it loosened up because I opened it, but that tells me that that connection right there is a little loose, so I'll fix that before you know, I put it away and before I go on my next dive. So as I said, I like going over all the connections, and on this one, because it has a clear cover, it's much easier to you know, kind of catch something, especially if there's water coming inside. That's always my big fear, is to have water damage on this thing. So I go over all the connections and make sure that there's no humidity, that the scooter is nice and dry. And you know, you can use a flashlight to check. The other thing is you want to look at the screws inside. There are a few screws inside that you should once in a while check to make sure that they're in good shape. You have the ones here for the you have 4 that keep the motor in place. You should check those. I'm sorry, I know that there's probably going to be a little bit of lighting issue here today, but so you have these 4 mounts that keep your motor in place. Talking about these right here. Okay, let's see. There's 4 of them. And then you have the actual engine case screws that you also should check to make sure that they're, you know, snug, not over tight, but snug. Okay. And every time you go diving, after a dive, when you get home, check for water, because, you know, once in a while these things spring a leak. Okay. Alright guys, and there it is. So the prop has been assembled back together. I've washed everything, and I just like to make sure that there's no play in and out on these things, that it's running clear. Okay, and always make sure that you go over everything, your seals, your switch, any of the things you attach to it, the computer. This is obviously something I attached later, my GoPro, and the highly recommended compass that we use. Okay. Another thing that I can't stress enough is the rubber gasket seals, whatever you call the O-rings on these things. If you just acquired one of these scooters, the first thing you should do is really to change the seals. The original seals that come with the Gavin scooters are thinner than these. I'm going to post a link in the video description to my page, where you can actually find links in the measurements and places for you to get these thicker O-rings, and they give you a much better water seal. And if like I said, if you're still using the old ones, get rid of them as soon as possible, because you're running a chance of flooding your scooter, and that's, you know, not something you want to do. So change them and get the thicker ones. They work much better. And you have 2. You have one on the cone, and you have one down by the engine compartment. You have 2 of them. One on the cone up here, another one right there. Make sure they're always clean. There's no sand, no dirt, nothing, because when you close it, you want a nice, you know, contact, and you want it to be good, or else you run into problems. Take a look at the video. See if if there's anything else you'd like me to explain. Let me know. I welcome all your constructive criticism, any comments, any questions. You can put them down below on the comments, and I try to reply to everybody. And please subscribe. Good night.